How's it going, everyone? Today we'll be doing abstract factory design pattern. All right, so this is a build on of the factory pattern. So we'll be going over what it is and hopefully some ways to memorize it to get it in long-term memory. Okay, so abstract factory design pattern is a creational pattern. So it's a way to create objects. And it's a step beyond the factory method pattern, which I just talked about. So it's best to go to the factory method pattern video that I have first and understand what that is. And then the third point here, it gives the client a factory from a group of factories. Okay, so we need to understand what a factory is. What's a factory? It's a class that can give us objects instantiated, or it could just be a method that calls out to a class that generates the objects for us. So this pattern is a factory, gives the client, so the caller, a factory from a group of factories. So there could be a number of different factories that create different types of objects at runtime. So you're able to choose a factory from a group of factories. Okay, and then it creates an object using that factory. So client kind of has two jobs. It needs to grab a factory, and then it grabs an object using that factory, all at runtime. Okay, if that didn't make sense, hold on, because I'm going to go through a few examples to hopefully solidify it in your mind. Okay, so we have a ski report app example for the abstract factory design pattern. So let's say I'm in Colorado and I want to look up what the ski report is because I like snowboarding. And I want to know also what the forecast is, but maybe I want to just know the snow report. But my app needs to support both of those use cases, a forecast and then also the snow report. So we're going to create two different factories for those, and we're going to create an abstract factory class to be able to figure that out. Okay, so let me head over to the iPad and show you the diagram now. Okay, so I'm here on the iPad. You can see I've drawn out some UML diagrams for you. So over here on the very right is our client, right? So think of this as like me, the user of the app, or it could be a main method in your application. Whatever it is, the client is going to be calling out to get a factory. Remember, a factory can give us an object at runtime kind of dynamically by a parameter or something. So it's a good way to create objects. Okay, so we are at the client here. Let's say it's main, and the client is going to call this factory generator class that we have. This factory generator class is going to give us one of two factories. So I talked about the ski weather forecast factory and the ski conditions factory. So this will give us our snow, and then this one will give us our forecast. So depending on what the client wants, a factory will be returned back here. And then with that factory, the user can pass in the nearest ski resort kind of parameter there, and it'll get back one of these six objects back to the client so that the client knows which location is closest to them. Okay, so that might not make sense either, but let's get into the code. I'll show you an example of running this, and I'll give you the code out on GitHub as well so you can go through it. Okay, so here we are at the main method here, and I'm going to just run it here just so you know that it works. And then I'll kind of go backwards from it working, right? Sorry, it's being a little slow. Okay, so I just ran it. I pass in latitude and longitude of my current location, right? And I grab a ski report type because I want the forecast. I pass that into that generator. Remember that box, the generator will give us a factory. So it'll give us an abstract factory. Then the client then uses this factory because I have the forecast factory now, right? And I just want to get the nearest ski report, okay? With my latitude and longitude, this happens to be in Colorado. So then I will go and fetch the Colorado ski report, but it's going to be the forecast here. So if you look down here, you'll see that it is sunny and a high of 32 and low of 21 Fahrenheit in Colorado right now. This is all stub data, but you can hook it up to real data sources if you wanted to. Okay, so that's it working. So let's dig into the pieces here. So first, I'm using this factory generator. I'm using this ski report type. So this is an enum. So let's go into that and see what that's all about. So that's declared in this factory generator. So I have different types of ski reports that I can generate for my client. And the client just needs to know whether they want a forecast or a snow report. And then I have this static kind of factory generator, or it gives me back a factory at runtime. So based on the ski report, I return different types of factories back. Okay. So you'll see that over here. So I use this type, pass it in here, get ski report generator here, and then I return back the correct generator. And you'll notice that this is an abstract return type here, right? So if I go to this class, this is where the abstract factory pattern is kind of defined, right? So abstract ski report factory is an abstract class, and all it does is declare this get near ski report. Okay. And then I have multiple classes that implement this, and they're not just classes, they're actually factories. And if you remember what a factory is, it is a class that generates concrete classes for me at runtime based on maybe a different value that's passed in from the client, whatever they want. Because the client doesn't need to know about these different objects behind the scenes, right? They just need to know about getting a ski report, and then they're good, right? Okay. It's a little bit more involved than the factory pattern, because the factory pattern, you just invoke the factory and then you get the object. But this one, there's one extra step where the client gets the factory and then invokes the method on the factory, right? Because there's multiple factories, because there's two factories behind the scenes here. Client doesn't know this, but the client just kind of passes in the type. So let's say you're on an app or something and you have a little toggle or a drop down that's like, hey, what kind of ski report do you need? Forecast, or do you need a snow report? And then maybe that would get passed down into this program, and then you would, have code that would grab the right factory and grab the right object there at runtime. Okay. So then now we have our factory. Client has the right factory here. And now we say get nearest ski report. Okay, and that jumps over here to this abstract class. But because I got a specific factory here, and I'll show you which factory I got here, it is going to be this ski weather forecast factory, right? Because I typed in the enum of forecast. So then I'm here. And then my Latin long is Colorado, which, as you can see, I've hard coded here, gets returned. And then Colorado ski weather forecast gets returned. And then that's where I see this code, right, that outputs to this console. Sunny and high and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. I have all this code in GitHub, so if you don't understand it, go ahead and debug through it, write it out, fully understand it, because it's a really great pattern for creating objects. Okay, so why would we use it? Again, it's separate jobs and concerns in your application. So you saw there's a number of different classes, but each one has its own purpose, and it was hooked up to the right hierarchy, right? So that we could add more in the future, and then the client doesn't need to know which class to call until runtime, right? And they don't really even need to know which class, right? They just need to know what parameters to pass, and then our application, because it's organized in the right fashion using this pattern, can spit out the right object at runtime. And then third point here, abstract factories give you the flexibility to have separate factories for the clients to use. So I could add another factory, like right now I have snow report, forecast. I could have like lift operations, how many lifts are open, or what the base amount of snow is, or which resorts are open, what restaurants are open. I could have a number of different factories that give me different kinds of reports, and I could do that with this pattern. Okay, and then how can we memorize this pattern so that we can use it in our applications? So if you remember this diagram, we have multiple factories, and they can create different types of objects there. So I put different colors there. We could have maybe a ski report. We could maybe have a snowboard report. So different factories that can create a number of different types of objects. And we want the client to be able to choose or be able to be given the right factory via a parameter or something like that. So if you have, a number of similar types that are similar enough to be connected through an abstract hierarchy, then you should organize it with the abstract factory pattern, or at least give it a shot, think about it. So just think of the skewer example and think of factories as creating objects. So think of them as literal factories that create objects for you. And if you have a family of factories that are kind of similar, then you should use this pattern. All right. Hope that made sense. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later.